evening, everyone, and welcome to History Today. My name is Aisha Levine Skinner, and I am coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee, a city whose landscape was forever changed by the Civil War. In the frigid winter of 1864, this ground became the stage for one of the war's final decisive battles. But to understand the fight for Nashville, you first have to understand the city itself, why it was a prize of immense strategic value to control, and why both sides were desperate to control it. So, the strategic importance of why Nashville was so critical to control can be broken down into four key areas. So, first we have the Union Forward operating base. This basically had massive supply depot, food, ammunition, and reinforcements that flowed across the region. Now, next we have the vital transportation crossroads. Whoever controlled Nashville controlled basically the critical river and railroad networks. This allowed Nashville to keep the war machine moving inside of it. Now, third, we have the city as the economic engine, as a key industrial and agriculture center. Its loss was a devastating blow to the Confederacy's ability to supply its own troops. Now, finally, it held the immense symbolic power. As the first Confederate state capital to fall, its occupation was a constant painful reminder of the Union's strength deep in the Southern Territory. With an asset this valuable on the line, the Union spared no expense in turning Nashville into a fortress, a city built for war. So now let's talk about the city under the fortress. By the time the Confederate army arrived, Nashville was not the vulnerable capital they once saw it. It was one of the most fortified cities on the actual region. Held by the Union since 1862, it has been transformed into a massive supply depot, ringed by defenses and anchored by the imposing Fort Negley, as you can see in the picture. This was a formidable prize the Confederate General John Bell was marching his army north to capture. His desperate final campaign was now set on a collision course with Nashville. So now let's get to the climax of the entire timeline from invasion to annihilation. The road to Nashville began after the fall of Atlanta. Losing that critical city forced Confederate General Hood into a desperate gamble, a full-scale invasion of Tennessee to lure the Union Army away and reclaim the lost ground. First, in the fall of 1864, Confederate General John Bell launched his malicious invasion of Tennessee. Then on November 30th, this gamble led to the bloody Battle of Franklin. It was a disastrous day for the Confederacy in the brutal frontal assault against entrenched Union forces. Hood's army suffered a devastating loss, including six of his generals being killed. Through the damage by disaster by Franklin, by December 2nd, Hood depleted forces began the siege of Nashville. Finally, on December 15 and 16, the Union victory was secured. General Thomas launched a massive two-day assault that shattered the exhausted Confederate lines, bringing the battle to finally a decisive conclusion. This change of events basically wasn't a matter of chance, it was a result of high stakes chess match played by the generals who led these armies separately. Now, who were the faces behind the war? And this basically became a duel of commanders and generals. On the Confederate side, John Bell's signature aggression was met by Union George H. Thomas, a famously strategic planner and ably supported by the hero Franklin John Schofield, his general. The movements of the subordinate commanders like the Confederacy Stephen D. Lee, who was also a general for John Bell, would determine the fate of thousands. When the plans of these commanders and generals finally met the battlefield, the result was a clash of stunning force. And the price of that victory and that defeat would be counted in thousands of lives on that battlefield. Although the Unions have won victory over this battle, the cost to it was very tremendous. From the start, the battle was a mismatch in numbers, with the Union losing over 3,000 men and the Confederate losing over 6,000 men. Thomas' well-supplied Union army faced Hood's depleted Confederate force. The result was a catastrophic toll. As General Thomas reported, the fields were strewn with enemy dead and wounded. General Hood himself would later even recall it was the only time he saw a Confederate army abandon the field in confusion. But for the city of Nashville, a new struggle was just the beginning, the task of rebuilding from ashes of war and forging a new society. From division to reconstruction, what followed was both a period of messy and transformative. Out of the destruction, new schools rose for newly freed African Americans, new industries were born, and a new vision of freedom took hold as Nashville began to emerge as a beacon of Southern rebirth. Amidst all this flurry of social and economic damage, one single act would come to symbolize this new era, a unprecedented gift from an unlikely source intended to heal the nation itself. In America still raw with memory of war, the foundation for a new future was being laid at the same time. It began in 1872 with the vision of Methodist Bishop Holland McTyrie. He dreamed of a major university to heal and educate the South, but lacked funds. His journey then led him to the New York City for a fateful meeting with Cornelius Vanderbilt. Urged on by his Saturn wife, the tycoon saw a powerful opportunity to help reunite the nation. That meeting led to the unprecedented gift of 1873. Vanderbilt Cornelius donated $1 million, a staggering fortune, and a radical act of faith and reconciliation. From this gift, a university was built on unity was born. Founded on Vanderbilt's stated mission to strengthen the ties which should exist between all sections of our common country. The visions of healing continues to shape the city today as we are here and now. But it's not only the legacy of war across Nashville, the echoes of the battle itself are not silent. They live on in the very soil and stone of the city today. Those echoes live on preserved stones even today. Of Fort Negley Park, they are remembered at the solemn peak of Shies Hill, and they are honored at the Grand Battle of Nashville Monument. You can walk to these historic grounds today, sites preserved as direct link to our past. They teach us that a city's darkest hour can become the catalyst for its brightest future. From a battlefield to a beacon, Nashville Legacy is a powerful reminder that even out of the deepest division, a more perfect union can and must rise. So the next time you walk out on the streets of Nashville, you're walking on a ground shaped by history, a history of division, resilience, and ultimate unity. For history today, I am your today's host, Aisha Skinner. Thank you so much for joining me.